So I'm Maria, coming to you from Pause, Alchemy of Women. And today I'm super excited to interview my bestest friend in the whole wide world, Amy Schiava, who is by nature of her own experience, I would deem a menopause expert, at least in her own body. So hi, Amy, how are you?
Oh.
So
as always.
So I wanted you to come on the podcast today because I know you've had some menopause challenges, some menopause successes by way of being done with it, at least. So yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this idea of how we could possibly rebrand menopause, because I know that we share the same idea about this. Everything before menopause is pre-menopause, then we're in perimenopause, then the second you don't have your period for a year, you're in menopause, and then everything else is post-menopause. And for me, it's kind of a load of crap. I'll just be honest here on the podcast. It's like, what else can we call it? How else can we look at it? So I would love to hear about your experiences and what you think about that rebranding of menopause.
Well, I was going to say we could start right there when you said, because I'm done with it, because am I? Yes, I'm officially through. Like, I haven't had my period for a year. So technically, according to the medical industry, at least in the United States, I am post-menopause. But okay. I kind of still feel like I'm still going through it. I still get hot flashes sometimes. I don't know. I just still feel like I don't know why it needs to be. I don't know why we need to label these things like start and finish. Same thing. Like, I see my kids going through their like adolescence and the hormonal stuff. That doesn't just like, it ebbs and flows like everything. It doesn't just like start and end,
Right.
And I think we like to look at things like that. And trust me, because I have had a lot of negative things, I guess, during menopause. I'd love to be like, yes, I'm done with it. It's over.
Right. I think that's why we want to label it as over. So because if it's negative, you're like, I'm done. But some women don't even start symptoms. I'm sorry to say to women out there, but some of people don't even start symptoms until after. Hot flash symptoms come only after. Doesn't mean they stay forever.
Yeah. And it also, I mean, they're not great, but I don't know. It's just like everything. It's like, if you're looking forward to it being so terrible, we're told, like, our whole lives, we're like, oh my God, oh, you're in menopause. Oh my God, is it starting? Oh no, it lasts 10 years. Oh, I mean, if you're expecting it to be terrible, it's probably going to be terrible. A lot of the stuff we were talking about too, like, just from my personal experience, I had a lot of symptoms. I had a lot of hot flashes, and it started like 10 years ago, probably, right? And I had a lot of hot flashes. I had, I don't know, migraines. My migraines started during menopause, when my perimenopause started.
Mine too.
And a lot of other things, right? And so those were not great to deal with. And well, a couple things on my journey. So during those whole 10 years, like, all of these symptoms were just like thrown into like, oh, you're in menopause. My period started fluctuating. So it was just like, oh yeah, that's all just part of menopause. And my migraines were like consistently getting worse and worse. And then finally one doctor said to me, because I was like, my periods had almost stopped at this point and my migraines were getting like more often. And a female, actually from another country, she was like visiting here. She was like, anyhow, she had a little bit of a different perspective. And she just looked at me and she said, that doesn't make sense, because if they were related to like the hormonal changes and all those things, they wouldn't be getting worse as your hormones were diminishing. They'd actually would be subsiding. And
Right. Because a lot of the things, as I learn now, that it's actually a lot of the beginning symptoms are because your estrogen goes way high in the very beginning.
Right.
So it's actually not the like
but not, they wouldn't have like been increasing is what she was
Right.
saying,
Right.
you know? And so, it even like took like a year after that. Long story short, eventually somebody was like, hey, you know what? Let's like do some blood work on you. Turned out it was pre-diabetic,
Mm.
which, not for anything, those hot flashes are also symptoms of like your like the insulin overload, because
Yeah.
now that I know about it, when I eat the wrong thing, I can literally feel it in my body, and it feels very similar to a hot flash. Very
Well,
similar.
and also Amy, that I mean, I just said she's my best friend, so I know a lot of things about her, but so you know, stress and
Yes.
cortisol are so linked to insulin too. And you know, Amy has 3 kids, so just say it, you know, among, you know, stress that we all have, you know, and so cortisol, and if you also have a blood sugar issue, those are the types of things that can feel like awful menopause symptoms, and they're actually symptoms of something which is actually more dangerous than just menopause is natural. But prediabetes is a more dangerous situation that is unfortunate that no one checked that before this woman. Luckily she did.
Right. Like I know when I look back, I'm like, I really didn't need, I'm sure I didn't need to feel that bad. And you remember, of course, that time period, I was a very stressful time in my life. I was like breaking up with Chuck. Like there were all kinds of stressful things happening.
He also owned
Kids,
an ice cream shop.
kids were
FYI.
small. I was working way too much and not sleeping enough. So like all of those things, I am sure, increase those symptoms.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't have had them, but they probably didn't need to feel so terrible. And I think it sucks that they just like, well, first of all, that's just like menopause is, they treat it like it's a medical condition, which it really isn't. And so they're just like, oh, I'm diagnosing you with menopause. Here we go. Oh, you're having all these problems. Great. It's all menopause. Just, you know, once you get through that, and then you die pretty much because you're useless. So we don't care. Is the messaging. That's the messaging that I think needs to change.
And this is how people who watch my podcast regularly will know Amy does not have Facebook or any sort of social media, and so she hasn't really seen my podcast, but as you can tell, we're very linked, and she says all the things that I've been saying. I didn't prep her with any of this stuff. We just happen to feel the same way in the world.
We talk
Very
about
far
when we're not on the podcast.
That's right. Yeah, so that experience especially sounds kind of scary too, of, you know, you actually having this other fairly serious medical condition, and then it just like, well, you're just getting older. And where there, you know, I assume that maybe you felt kind of like brushed off about your other symptoms throughout the whole process when you went to see someone. Is that true?
I would say yes. And like, you know, even back to my pregnancies, I definitely felt like that way with many of the doctors. I had very difficult, as you know, pregnancies in terms of just like feeling sick, not in terms of my health really or the baby's health. But well, it felt like a health problem because I was
Very
nonstop.
sick, very, very,
Like,
very
like a
sick.
health problem. And I swear to God, I remember only one doctor that cared that I was still sick, and it was a female doctor. And I was like, it was with my last kid, and I was like, it's like month 7, and I am literally still throwing up. And she was just like, she wrote it down in all caps, and she was just like, she's like, you're fine. It's not like, you know, everything is fine, but like, just that, like, I care about you, that this is a symptom that you're going through, which
Mhm.
the medical industry here does not care about your symptoms really at all. They just like when they can like put them in a category and then not deal with them.
Right. Well, really, yeah, in menopause.
Especially, you know, female problems. I'm doing air quotes because like they shouldn't be labeled problems.
Yeah, and I mean that was like something I did.
Experiences that every
Sorry.
woman goes through. I mean, that's crazy that
Yeah.
we're called a medical condition or a problem.
Well, and that was like in the early 1900s. I did a webinar a long time ago about that, and it was like, yeah, you know, all of a sudden doctors decided it was like some sort of syndrome or condition or whatever, you know, called puberty. a medical condition. It's just your
Right.
hormones are changing. And so,
Right.
it feels a way to put us in this icky category. And, I used to be involved in interacting with these big Facebook groups that were about menopause. And that was one of the things that I was like, because they would say, I don't know what to do. I went to the doctor because I was having this, and now I got diagnosed with menopause. I'm like, it's not cancer. Like it's very, that piece like adds to, like you were saying, it makes you feel like it's something that it's terrible. I don't, it's either going to hurt, or you're going to feel terrible, or you're just going to be old. Maybe you're going to die. I don't, it's like you feel like you have a thing now.
Yeah. And it's something
transitioning.
Don't want to happen, but is going to happen to all of us. I mean, it seems crazy that just accepting, labeling it that way.
Right. Yeah. Because we talked about too, it's pre, peri, menopause, post. Like, I think I might have told you this, Amy, but, I was talking about calling it no fucks left to give time, which
I absolutely love that. So as I say, look at some of the things it does give you. Why are we only look at like the negative things? Like now, perhaps you're like I'm not a doctor, as you know, but or a historian, or but I just look at like, what does it do for you? I don't know. For me, it made me less focused on, I don't know, needing a male companion, needing a sexual male companion. That can be quite freeing. It sounds like death to people before you get there, and everyone. And it doesn't. I'm not saying I'm never going to be interested in sex again, but it was just like a freeing moment of like, hold on, I don't need this crap. I don't need to put up with this anymore. Like it just felt really freeing, and I felt super like powerful and independent, and like, wow, I do have everything I need. And it made me like, I felt like as I was getting older, you start to like, oh, when you're 30, you don't give a fuck. Then when you're like 40, you don't give a couple fucks. And when you find here is when you give no fucks at all. I mean, I think that's what it is. And so that's a really powerful place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've had a couple of people request that I do as podcasts specifically on how to do that less. But I think one of the ways is just really going through this process of, and why is there something specific other than just hormonal changes and being older, and maybe this piece of not really necessarily feeling like you need men anymore. And of course, that's not the case for all women, but
Right.
is there something specific that you would say helped you, or that you learned in order to feel that way? And, like when we talk about no fucks left to give, that doesn't mean you don't care about anyone. It just means all the crap that was so important before, you realize like,
Right.
it's not that important. Like, why do I care what people think? Why do I care what you think about how I look? Why do you care what you think about me sexually? Why do you, all of those things? Yeah. That's what it's like, more about what you feel, right?
Yes,
absolutely. Care about what you think, and not so much about
you start seeing that all of the judgment and the labels and all of this stuff that everybody's been trying to like put on you, and all the boxes they're trying to put you in, all of a sudden you're like, wait, none of that really matters. Actually, I don't need to fit into those boxes, or at least that's kind of where I was. What helped me is, what helps me through everything, reading. I am a memoir addict, as you know. So I don't know, I read a bunch of books, not on like the menopause condition, but like on people going through it from a feminist perspective, mostly because that is the perspective that I come from. And it was the most empowering to me. So I don't know, I read a number of books that, just like put a different perspective on it and different labels on it. I can't remember the name of that first one. I think
Flash Count Diary.
That one, but that one too. But God, I'm sorry, I should have had this like ready. It was like a number of like stories. It was like Red Moon Passage, maybe.
Oh, right. Something like that. Hmm.
And that's, I remember when I first started thinking like, yeah, why do we call it this? And she was like, it's more of like a journey, a passage. It's not just like this like hell time to go through. It's like, this is the time to listen to your body. This is the time when like you get closer to like the underworld and the spirits. And I really felt that. I really did. And then, yeah, the one you just mentioned, Flash Count Diary. I forgot the author on that one, but that one was really good.
I have that book. I haven't read that one yet, but I can put that in the comments after the
That one was great. It's funny. She's mad. And she's funny. And she also does like, which I really liked, she looked at, she was a writer before, I can't remember her story. And she did a lot of nature stuff, but what she included in there was like, she talked about whales because, whales live through menopause as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You told me.
And what the older women whales are the leaders. Of course they are. And they, so it's just like, I forget what she says about it, but she was just like, like there's no cultural shit on them being like, you're useless now. They're not useless. They're wise. They have lived a long time. They have raised children or helped raise children or seen children be raised, like now I'm talking about human women as well, like you've been through a lot and you're wise now. Like,
and the other whales are not like, oh, you're wrinkled, you should probably get Botox.
Yeah, exactly. You're useless because you can't make babies. Not at all, actually. They look to them and follow them.
Well, and I have used that example before. I don't remember when, maybe in my old program that I did, or I know I shared it in another video of me talking to this woman who was talking about being useless because she couldn't, and she had kids. I mean, this is a different topic if you want children and then you're in menopause, and that's a whole different grieving process if you want them. I don't have them because I didn't want them. This woman had children, didn't want any more, but then was still feeling kind of useless after. And I said to her, well, I don't have any children. I don't plan to. And I also plan to live to 100 or so. And so does that mean at the end of my 100 years, if I didn't have children, that my whole life was useless? And she was like, oh my God, it's a very nice woman I know. And she was like, right. Oh God, I'm sorry. Like she thought you offended me. Right. And I was like, she said, oh my God, I didn't mean that. Like, that's not what I mean. Of course your life wasn't useless. And I said, well, then why is yours useless now that you can't have kids anymore? It's like, it's the same mindset of like, if you don't have any children, you're of course not useless for your whole life. You're doing lots of things. Yeah. And so, but we still have this piece of like, now I can't anymore. I can't have this thing, even if I don't want it. Yeah. It's interesting.
And men won't find me attractive. And you know what? It's not just about like, it's not even just like men, because it's not even just like, oh, like, even if you don't want a sexual partner, it doesn't even have anything to do. Your value is based on your, like, just your overall value is based on your sexual attractiveness, at least in this culture, for sure. Women look at you that way. Everybody does. And also too, that I know we've talked about this, and I mean, this isn't directly menopause, but just like aging in general. It's like, I just turned 50, as you know.
I do know.
And I'm proud of it. I'm like, no, but it just is what it is. There's people, I'm like, the age is not like, it's the same thing. I'm like, it's not a problem. It's not a diagnosis. It's not anything. And then people are like, oh, but you look so young. You don't look 50. Thank you.
Yeah. It's like a backhanded compliment.
I know you're trying to compliment me, but
you look good for your age. I'm like, I don't thank you. And also screw you.
Why is old bad? Yeah, you're going to look different because that's what happens. Like, we're so against aging that's why I think people fear menopause too, because rumor has it, once you go through menopause, that's it. Without those hormones, you instantly turn into an old hag, right?
But one of the things I always talk about, and I don't remember if we talked on the phone about this, but like, I'm obsessed with Betty White. Right?
Oh, yes. I love it
We,
too.
we talk about that, and I remember, watching some interview, like like soon before she died, right? She died when she was like, it was like a month before she was turning 100, right? And I remember thinking, God, she's so young. Of course, she doesn't look young. If you look at her, she was super wrinkled, like
Mhm.
very wrinkled. She always had kind of that wispy hair that was like, as my mom would say, the old lady do, like my
Yeah,
grandmother always had that, where it's like maybe a perm, of really thin
yeah,
hair.
she's looked like that since I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of looked grandmotherly, whatever the hell that means, but for a long time, but she looked so youthful. And it's actually because what I think, at least for me, from my perspective of why I look at her and think young, she's always smiling. Her eyes were twinkling. She always looked like she was probably having a good time and also doing something naughty. And so like that's always like me. And so, like laughter and people who like, I love gray hair. I mean, Alberto, my partner, he has gray hair and I don't think it makes him look older. And,
Right.
just owning whatever look you decide to have. And I feel like that's the part of getting older that I'm looking forward to, is kind of being able to have way more confidence in yourself than I always talk about. I don't want to be 20. Like I had a very hot body when I was 20. I had like a 6-pack, but I was so worried about what other people thought that I don't think it was worthwhile. That's why people always say, like, if you could have the body and everything of the youth and know all the things that maybe things would be different, but like, yeah, why does it matter who decided wrinkles were bad,
Right.
decided that you couldn't,
That you're
gain weight. And
looking, that you
mhm.
can't look old. I mean, how about you look? I mean, and this doesn't sound like a compliment in our society, but you look healthy.
Right.
Okay, awesome. You look,
Great.
don't always look happy, but you look happy. You look
Vibrant. Any of
vibe.
those things. So
Sounds good to me. Yeah. But it really gets under my skin when people are like, oh, you don't look 50. I remember when I was like, I don't know, maybe 35, when I was like working at the eatery. So however long that was ago, 10,
yeah.
15 years ago. And I turned whatever age, let's say 35, maybe 40. And my boss was like, ooh, don't tell people that because you don't look that old. I'm like, what? Okay. Again, like, what?
I'm obsessed with telling how
Oh,
old
how
I am. I
all of a sudden they're gonna think I'm what? Terrible? I mean,
I love
it's
to tell people how old I am, actually. I think it freaks people out. They don't know. I'm 46, disclosure on the Facebook. I'm sure I've said it before, but not on this podcast. But I love to tell people, because also it confuses people. I mean, I live in Peru. People are very wrinkled because they work in the sun
yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah.
I always say I love a good face cream. I'm a producer of natural face creams. That's one of my jobs. I love that. I love hydrating. I love eating
Mm-hmm.
well, so you look good. Like I always
Right.
say, I started to get these lines and I had a very tough year last year, and there was a lot of crying. And so I don't like them because of that. But I always used to say, any wrinkles that come from smiling or being at the beach, don't care. If
Good
they come
memory.
from being
It's like
sad.
your memories that are like printed on your face.
I forget, I don't know if you wound up reading that book of Justine Bateman that was called
No,
Face,
I
Square Foot of
didn't.
Skin.
I did not.
I mean, you and I talked about it, right? Because that's she was like, I wanted to look. She's like, when I looked young, I felt like I looked like naive and that I didn't have any experience. She's like, I couldn't wait to look like these women who were, I think she's like referring to kind of maybe Parisian women smoking cigarettes and looking older and having gray hair and stuff. Just the way she explains it was very funny. But yeah, she wanted that of like, I'm not a kid. This is though I'm a woman. I have done things. I have had children. I've laughed.
Yeah,
I've cried. I've been in the sun. She says she used to go skiing all the time. She's like, I want to look like I did the things I did.
yeah, yeah. There should be nothing wrong with like looking however old you are.
Right. Well, I know it's always funny too, because Alberto is luckily he doesn't watch these. Oh, if he does, he doesn't speak English, so he doesn't know every time I tell everyone how old he is. But he's going to be 62 this year, and you know, like I said, a lot of people here look older, but he takes really good care of himself. He goes running. He's one of those people that goes running at 5 o'clock in the morning. I never thought I'd be with someone like that, but he does it, and exercises. And, you know, he's really full of life and youth, but people here are like, oh my God, so old. How could you be that old? You know, but you look so young. It's like, I hate to be cliche of age is just a number, but like really it is.
Right.
But anyway, we digress as we do.
Yes.
My mom
As
had asked me, you know, are you and Amy just going to talk like you are on the phone? I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe. So getting back to the subject of menopause specifically, well, I would love to hear whatever you want to say about it. But if you want to talk maybe about some of the challenges you had and how you dealt with that, or how you feel now, really anything you want to talk about, honestly.
I don't know. I guess I would say that my worst symptom was just definitely the hot flashes. I mean, I was always a freezing cold person. So for all of a sudden to just be fucking sweating, sorry, I'm cursing. I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah, there's always cursing on my podcast. I just had
all
Monica Ballard on my podcast, so you know, Amy knows her as well. They live in the same town, so don't worry. I always put an F-bomb disclaimer on my podcast.
So, I mean, honestly, I would feel like that was the worst symptom, was having the hot flashes all of a sudden to be, I mean, it would happen like at night all the time, but also like when it happens when you're just like in public or like at work, all of a sudden you're just sweating and it's gross. And then you're freezing cold because you're soaking wet. So like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how much information is too much information, but we also know Eric won't be watching this podcast. So. But I started going through menopause when I had like a new gentleman lover. And it was just like, oh my God, like all of a sudden I woke up in the middle of the night completely sweating. And I was like, I'm so sorry. This is really disgusting. And actually, he was super like supportive and cool about it and accepting of it. And that really helped a lot, because it, you know, it's a natural thing that's happening. And he was just like, it's fine. And he would be sweet. He'd be like, let me fan you. You know, that's what you need, someone who's not going to be like, you're you're sweaty. So, I mean, that helped. I mean, I don't know, just like I don't really remember, honestly, I'm like not really remembering too many other like physical symptoms. Definitely the period, just like all of a sudden you'd have your period for like 3 weeks. That's annoying. And you getting the symptoms along with it for 3 weeks, and then it would go away, and then like just not knowing when it would come. I had a long time of like that of like sporadic periods happening. So that was like, I didn't love that. But again, it wasn't like, I mean, it doesn't sound that bad, right? I feel like the anticipation of everything and that is worth actual through of it, because I mean, you know, and like I said, I definitely did have a decrease in my sexual desire. But I was also like at the end of a relationship that kind of wasn't working anyway. You know, I kind of feel like it's like, instead of it being like a drying up of your sexual desire, it's more of a like, just like with everything, like pinpointing it. So you get rid of the fluff, you know? So I'm like, oh, was I just doing this for him? Because he's like, wow, I don't actually care anymore. So it's kind of maybe like that. I mean, I haven't had a new partner since then, so like I don't, you know, but I am very open to it. So it's, you know, but I feel like it's kind of like that. And that's what I forgot the author's name, but in that Flashpoint Diary, she talks about that, because she's with a husband, and you know, she just like all of a sudden was just like, hold up, what do I really want here? You know, like it was just so all of a sudden like a just like I think we talked about the other day, but just like a kind of like a clearing of the fog. Like all of a sudden you just kind of see stuff for like what it is, which is great.
Yeah. Oh my God, you said so many good things. Oh my God. For those of you who don't know, Amy and I, this is our thing. We talk about all the things, right? But you've said so many good things. I
Break it
want to
down.
touch on. One thing is that idea of first having a supportive partner that is not like Alberto. Now he's always hot, but at night for some reason he's not that hot, but he'll go around now and open all the windows like before we go to bed. He's like, and that's something he would always be like, no, I want to sleep with the windows closed. I don't like to sleep with the windows are all open. So that sort of stuff is really helpful. And also I feel like that's one of the I think the hot flash thing, that's seen on TV shows that like, oh, the old lady's going through her hot flashes or whatever. And it's funny, like everything's a joke on the
Yeah.
women. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to smash the patriarchy, although that's my thing.
No.
But it's not just men, it's the whole society and we've allowed that it's a joke and we joke with other women about it and everything. So I think that piece is really important, because if you're like, oh, I'm having a hot flash, like, okay, oh, you're going to get sweaty. Cool. Like it wouldn't be a big deal. It wouldn't be a thing that was something to laugh at or be embarrassed about. I mean, yeah, nobody wants to like get sweaty in a meeting or whatever, but
Right.
if you're just like, oh, sorry, menopause, then people are like, oh, that makes sense.
Right.
And there wasn't all this shit attached to it. It would be a different experience. And then I also wanted to say about that piece that you said of maybe it's lowering of desire, and maybe it's realizing that that's not the partner you wanted to be with. And that, because one of the topics I have talked about before and want to cover is this piece of, sometimes women get to, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they want to break up with their partner. And maybe that is true for that relationship. Or maybe you have put up with crap that you didn't want to, and you people pleased, and you were a martyr, and you did all this crap that you didn't want to do. And now you've had enough. That's not necessarily the relationship. There are some relationships that could be, you say, hey, I did this for 20 years or whatever, and now I'm not going to do it anymore. And maybe you don't break up. Maybe it just shifts.
Yes.
So,
right. Depending on the strength of your relationship or whatever, or depending on why you got it. And two, I feel like too, that menopause often corresponds with, not in my case, because, the spread of my kids, but with the kids being out of the house. And then that's also another thing that keeps people together. Maybe they don't really want to be together. And that too, I do want to smash the patriarchy. And I will say that, I think that capitalism and the patriarchy go hand in hand. And if you look at how our society is set up, and I know this because I am a single mom, it's really hard financially to not have a partner, especially when you have kids. So why do they stay together? I mean, a million reasons. But then maybe, you get to both of those things. Maybe your kids are gone, and also you get to this point in menopause where you realize like, hey, wait, actually, I don't need this anymore. And also then your financial needs are smaller. To be honest, I look ahead and I'm like, ooh, I could just have a little apartment, and that would be a small financial need, and I wouldn't have to,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. And one thing that just came to me was, it came to me and then it went away. Sorry.
Sorry, because I didn't stop.
Forgetfulness is part of perimenopause, when I look back at this and say how many times we both said, what was that thing again? Anyway, no, that piece of, it's connected, I feel, to thinking this is some sort of syndrome or disease, as opposed to a life transition where maybe it's 10 years. Like, say, for instance, I'm very sensitive to my body. I think, I'm at the very early stages actually of perimenopause, but I think things have been happening for several years. I notice it because I'm very sensitive, but I feel like when women hear 10 years, they think, oh my God. And sometimes you will feel it for that long, but sometimes like maybe 7 of those years, you didn't even notice.
Right.
Depending on your hormones, depending on the thing. But one thing, that I have noticed that it makes me very mad, in the sense of I'm mad at everything because of mood swings and the hormonal shifts. I was never someone that had any sort of PMS, very mild, very mild. I was very lucky. And now I really get it. And, when your progesterone drops right before, so at the beginning of perimenopause, your estrogen actually goes up. So then the difference between estrogen, two words that I say a lot and are very hard to say, estrogen and progesterone. I tried to say a word the other day on a podcast that I'm not going to try even to say again because it was bad, but it was very hard to say. The difference makes the mood swings, especially at the beginning, really intense, and also can make you cry. And, that's another thing that's like joked about in the menopause world, and, if you look up menopause meme, angry woman or whatever, you're going to get hundreds, maybe thousands of memes about like, menopause Godzilla and all this crap. And although it's true, I do feel sometimes like menopause Godzilla. Too bad. Imagine what it feels like inside, And so if there is some sensitivity and care around that topic, because I'll tell you what, if I'm mad because I'm in a mood swing based on hormones, and you say, like before, and they say, oh, what do you have your period? You say, what are you in menopause? Now I am going to be a menopause Godzilla. Now I have to kill you. That's how this is going to go. So if you have someone that's like, hey, would you like to take a walk? Would you like some chocolate?
Also, I'm going to get really crazy with this, because what I want to thank you for the whatever the word you said, drop, whatever happens with that progesterone drop, that's supposed to happen. And the rage is, maybe it's like I said, it's clearing the shit so you can be angry. It's not, you're not having to like people please and do that, all that other stuff that I'm making this up, that other hormone makes you have. I'm just saying it makes you more raw. It makes you more connected. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I crying and am I mad a lot? Guess what? I'm aware. I'm just more aware of stuff right now, because I don't have all this other stuff on my plate distracting me, like having to feed 3 kids or whatever it is that is distracting you when you're not menopausal.
Well, in that book,
why is it like, don't pay attention to that? Like that's just a hormone drop. Yeah, it's a hormone drop. Get ready for it. That's my body.
Also, I'm mad. I'm also probably mad at as a thing that's really happening. That book, I think I talked about this book. I know in Facebook I talked about this, but maybe I don't know if I did to you. It's called What Fresh Hell Is This?
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. And the woman, like we were saying, so post-menopause has been, she referred to it as something else, but basically the gist of No Fucks Left to Give. It was like something like that. I don't remember what her exact, but she said this other woman, and I'll post that book also in the comments, said post-menopause is when you don't care anymore, when you have no fucks left to give. Perimenopause is when all your fucks come home to roost. I loved it so much. I was like, oh my God. So it was like,
oh yes,
you start noticing everything. So it's not just, this hormonal piece and you're feeling kind of bad. And so you're kind of at the edge a little more, allows you to maybe explode in a way that you wanted to do 15 years ago and you didn't. And so it's not necessarily, we, especially as women, are taught, and I know I can imagine you wanted to talk about this, but we're not supposed to be angry. Like, it's not ladylike to be angry.
Yeah.
Like, it's not ladylike, like, to raise your voice. And, Amy and I are both from New Jersey, so it's isn't quite Italians from New Jersey. But then we both moved to a very small town in California. So it was much more like that. But that you're not supposed to be angry. And I was on this topic for a while of sacred rage, like maybe not breaking everything in your house, but maybe, but really kind of harnessing this energy of anger is a powerful emotion, and it tells you what you're not okay with.
Yeah. And when I going through menopause, I saw a lot of shit I wasn't okay with in the world, and I wasn't okay with it before either. But it's like, it really like, I love that too. Yeah. It's just all of a sudden it's all just right there. And that hormone drop just makes you ready for it. It makes us like cultural warriors. I mean, are you kidding me? Like if, I just feel like if, if the messaging and all the, everything were different, it would be like, you couldn't wait for women to get into menopause, because then they would like really fucking change the world. If you really want somebody to change the world. I remember Diana said this, my therapist and friend, she
Probably
said one
watching.
time about a menopausal woman, she said, she was like, how like before you get your period, like you have this rise, it's almost like this rise, like an energy, and then it kind of when when you get the period, you kind of feel that relief. She was like, a menopausal woman, it's just like, she was like, this was when I was like in the beginning of it, she was like, it just keeps going up and up and up and up. She goes, I feel like if you put a menopausal woman on a city power grid, she could power the whole city. And I always think of that visual, because I do remember feeling so like really like wired almost. Now I'm remembering that, like at the beginning of the menopause, feeling that kind of like almost insane energy that it felt like. But
Yeah.
yeah, we could put that shit to some good use. I mean, instead
Well,
of
it's
just
funny.
like, oh, look at the crazy lady, she's in menopause. That's not real. She's not really, like, no, I am really pissed, actually.
You're like, I'm
For good
actually,
reason.
it might be triggered by hormones, but I'm actually going to,
Right. I've
well, and it's
actually done
funny.
this for 50 years.
It's funny because Diana, who I also know is a magical herbal being, and I love her
Yeah.
in every way. And I was thinking, now I'm going to ask her. If Diana, if you're watching, I'm going to ask you to be on my podcast
Yes.
also, because
I
I
was
know
like, oh
she
yeah,
has.
sure. I talked to her the other day. She wants to be on it.
Okay, great. um, But that piece is so interesting. And I think you and I talked about this on the phone and I posted a long time ago in my group. I'm going to find it and repost it. I think I sent it to you. It was about in some Native cultures, I don't remember if it was the US or not, but the women, you weren't actually allowed to be a medicine, like a powerful medicine woman or shaman, shaman, which has nothing to do with man. That's just the word. The plural of shaman is shamans, not shaman, because it's not for man. Sorry, I live in Peru. I want to be really clear about that. You weren't allowed to be a well-respected medicine woman until after you were through menopause in the crone stage, love that term or not, because you didn't have all of the hormonal influence and you were more powerful and you could think more clearly,
Yeah.
And also this piece of transition, because as I said, think more clearly. And we joked about, memory loss or whatever, but the more I look into it and read about it and talk to women, it does seem to be, I mean, imagine it's like Amy has teenage boys, right? And so I had a teenage girl already. And so they're crazy, they're little nutcases because they're like chock full of all these hormones. And so you imagine in menopause, like you get this time of, the hormones are getting lower, but like I said, the estrogen is getting higher at first. So it's still wonky. And then that messes with your brain chemistry, obviously. So there is a time where maybe you're forgetful, maybe it's foggy, maybe you remember stuff. Besides the stress and besides getting older and besides us having children later. So you already are allegedly done with menopause and you still have teenage children. And so that's not what it was like before, because you would have had kids at 17 or whatever. And so there's a lot of pressures on us. So that adds to the forgetful nature. However, it doesn't mean it's permanent.
Right.
There's a shift in that. And then after, when that's not going on, that doesn't mean you have limited brain capacity forever and now you're almost dead. It doesn't mean that.
Thank you.
And that piece of it's like a quick march to death, it's just a downward spiral, like, oh, now you're like a dried up old lady, all that crap, it adds to this idea of like old is bad. And also 50 is not old, I mean, maybe it was old when people died at 50, that was old, but if you're 100, that's only halfway. Or 150, you're only a third of the way. You never know. Maybe that's too long, but you know, that piece of just like, the more we act like that's the end, the
Mhm.
crappier it feels. Like it doesn't have, when you look at it as not the end, you look at it as like, oh, that's a different time.
Yeah. And
Because
we
nobody,
probably have been living through and past menopause for a while now. Like,
yeah,
we're
yes.
not like dying at 50 or 60. Like people are living way past menopause.
Yeah, my great grandmother, I think she was 92 or 93, you know, and that was in the 80s. So it's not, yeah, it's not a new thing that people can live that long, you know,
Yeah.
and I mean, not that I'm trying to rush anything to get older, but I don't mind it. And, you know, there is a piece of me looking forward to, because I share Justine Bateman's kind of idea of, I've been getting kind of, I'll say, treated like a child for a lot of my life
Yeah.
because I do look young,
Young.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
in a store, or, you know, you need to talk to someone. I'd always be like, Mom, can you call? Like, even now, sometimes I'll have my mom call the insurance office or phone company because whatever, something about me makes them think I'm like not old enough or something. And especially in Peru, I get treated all, you know, as a little bit of a macho country, no, a lot of bit of a macho country, but, you know, like, oh, you're this little girl, you know? And so part of me wants to kind of like, I want just part of me, not all of me, wants all gray hair, you know, because it's like, well, then people will take me seriously, you
Yes.
know? And
Even
also you can do whatever you
some
want.
here who had like a career change later in life, and like she's like my age and she just started being a nurse like a few years ago, and she's like runs the department though, and she was like, I was like, oh, I thought you've been a nurse like your whole life, and she was like, no, and she was like, when you're this age they just assume you have all that experience, and I was like, ooh, that's cool, I never thought of that.
I like that. I like that.
uh, I will say one thing too that is frustrating. This is not related to menopause at all, but I'm just going to say it anyway because it's about getting older and being a woman, and like just working. I like if people take off, or they reduce their careers. Women do to do all the work with the children, and then when you try to go back to work, they're like, "Why don't you have it? You're so old. Why don't you have experience?" Can we maybe like start counting raising kids as like a life experience? Does anybody know how many skills that takes?
Yeah, it's
I
really,
spot 3 teenagers. Isn't that
wow.
enough? And when that qualify to be a prison guard?
Probably. I've met her kids. Yeah. No, I mean, I have 3 dogs and I'm like, why the hell would I have 3 dogs? It's so much work. You know, like I'm obviously not set up to have 3 children, but yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's
So,
an interesting
when you go to like be like, oh great, now I can do my thing. I'm ready for the world. My kids are like older. And then it's like, oh, everybody's like, what have you been doing with your life the past 20 years? Nothing. Cool.
well, you've just been sitting around at home
So
watching
then
soap operas. Well, and just the nature, I mean, even without the raising of the children, just the nature of having these hormonal shifts. I mean, I know and I don't totally blame men because we allow it and do it
of
and we're
course,
in
right,
it.
yes,
Now who the hell knows who's at fault? All of us together, I guess. But
of course,
you know,
yeah,
just being mocked for all the changes in our bodies and all the things we have to go through, and the different doctor's appointments, and then the actual childbirth and all of those things. I mean, it's like, when are we going to get a break on like what's a joke?
yeah,
Because part of me, and I will say this, smashing the patriarchy style thing, part of me thinks, if it does come from a masculine perspective, that all of the things that we could do with these hormones and with these female bodies is scary to men. Because
yes,
it's so powerful, because it's
yes,
miraculous and crazy, all of the things that happen in our bodies and creating people.
yes,
And we're creating other things by the nature of our feminine being.
yeah,
Um, it's very powerful.
yeah.
And
Well,
so,
that's what I've always said. I've said women are more inherently powerful. That's why all of these social constructs have been created to make men feel safe.
yeah, I agree. And don't worry, men, I believe in reincarnation. Next time you can come back as a woman, or maybe you're a woman
And
last
as a
time.
mother,
It's not just
Mother of 2 boys, 2 children. I have 3 kids. Mother of 2 male species humans. You know, this all hurts them too. Like you said, like now it's at the point where it's so ingrained in everything that it's just like it hurts everybody. You know.
Well, and I would like to talk just briefly about, Alberto, he is like I said, 6-year-old man that grew up in Peru with a very macho country 60 years ago, and a family of all the men were cops, that kind of family. And so he had he's a sensitive being that was born in this country and then was raised like that and has had to do a lot of stuff for himself. He's a very strong, powerful man, right? And he has been married twice before. But I always say he is the man in the world, I'm going to include male gynecologists in this. He's the most well-versed in menopause, most well-versed in menopause that I think exists. And he's really interested. He's really interested in what's happening. And I mean, not at first, right? But as much as it's like we can say men are doing this, if women don't take the time to understand what is happening to them, because my mom just said today, actually, I know more about menopause now than I did actually was going through menopause.
Because I started going through it, and then that's when it was probably like a few years after I was going through it that I started reading stuff. So
she only knows now because I won't stop talking about it to her.
Yeah, obviously the time to learn about it is like way before.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, well, good segue into what I'm about to say about my program, but and I didn't pay her to say this or egg her on, but just about Alberto, the thing about men is that imagine how confusing and a lot of information, and how women don't understand our periods, or probably even pregnancy, or things that happen after pregnancy, or menopause. We don't usually understand that. And so if we can't understand it and we can't give voice to that, to tell a man, and then we just expect them to know what the hell is going on. Of course, they think it's some weird, crazy thing because they're experiencing different hormonal shifts, but not like us. So it's also our part to explain this to the men, understand it, and then share it with the men in our life and share what's not okay. Like, hey, when you make fun of me for having hot flashes, it doesn't make me feel good. That makes me feel old or upset or whatever it is, that's also we can't just expect them to understand if we don't even understand.
Yeah. And sorry, I lost what I was going to say. Damn it. Come back. I know. Not all the partners we're with, the people we're close with, but also like everybody. I love to do this. I work in a restaurant, and I like to sometimes start the day with, I'll be like, okay, today the safe topics to talk about are menopause. I'm always throwing menopause in there because you know what? People are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to hear it. I did this with my boys too. We said the word vagina 1 million times, and they know what a vagina is, and they did. We're very young. Like it. The more you say the stuff, and the more you talk about it, just like in general or in a casual way, it just makes it like easier for people to approach it. And
I love that. And like I said, I'm not. It's funny because it's almost time for Amy to go because she has a tap dancing class, if I may share that with people. And she's 50 and she has just begun tap dancing.
I'm kidding, there's not one.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I filmed the recital, but there is not one.
I wish there was. If I was not in Peru and she was in California, I would film whatever. I would make her have a fake recital and share it public on Facebook because I said she doesn't have Facebook. She wouldn't even know. But so she's about to go to tap dancing, which I love, love, love. I love this idea, and I am actually waiting for adult ballet to start because I will also be starting that, but I digress. So I just did want to say, that is my main goal as a menopause mentor, because I want to talk about this stuff more, because that's why there can be jokes and there can be shame and there can be all these feelings, even women feeling really alone in this, that you said at the beginning, everyone whether you even call yourself a woman or not, if you have a uterus, or even if you had one and it was removed, you're going through some form of menopause. It's going to happen. And it's important to have these talks and to hear people's experiences so you don't feel so alone. And what you said before, the reason why I said that was a good segue is because I have a new program that I haven't launched yet, but this your top secret. If you got to the end of this podcast, you get to hear about it. And no one else gets to hear about it yet, but it's going to be called Menopause Boot Camp.
Oh, I love it.
It's going to be for women in any stage of pre or perimenopause, but it is specifically it's not necessarily specifically designed, but it's where it would be most helpful, either before you're even starting, or if you're in perimenopause, but really in any stage, or even if you just wanted to find out, but to kind of give the prep work so that women understand that it's not a disease, and understand that it doesn't, like what you said, it doesn't have to be awful. Sometimes it is. And also accepting you feel like crap. It's also a space to feel like crap. But really with this I'm the type of person where if I understand what's going on, it's never as bad.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's just our little secret. If you got to the end of this podcast, you get to hear about Menopause Boot Camp first. It'll be sometime in a 6-week program, sometime starting in October. So, but yeah, so now I think you have to go to tap class, but is there anything else, any wise words of Amy's wisdom that you want to leave it with? No pressure.
Too much pressure. Signing off.
That's also good. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Yes. Do you have something? Do you want to say something?
I don't work well under pressure.
That's why I did it. Well, anyway, no, but it was great to talk to you so much.
Thank you on your podcast. This is the first time I've been on a podcast, everyone, and it was terrifying. So I'm glad I did it. And now,
well, thank you. I really appreciate it because, I was living in California when Amy went through a lot of these menopausal things, and I know it was challenging, but it's like a light at the tunnel if you are having challenging times, and just sort of, like you said, this reframing and rebranding of the whole topic, that, it's something that you get through, and maybe it's crappy and maybe it's not, but there's lots of resources and ways to feel better. And if not, you're just a super powerful being at the end of it.
Yeah, and like bad things there definitely are good things in there. They really are. You're gonna have some good changes, and you're gonna experience some cool shit on top of the hot experiencing. There you go.
I love it. Good ending. So thank you so much, Amy. It was so great to have you. I'm going to try and figure out, I don't know how to stop the Facebook, so we'll see how it goes.
I know how to hang up, so I'll try to disengage from this.
Okay, love you. Thank you.
Bye. No, I don't think I know how to. Let's see. Nothing's happening.
We have this.
Oh, wait. I got it. Leave. Boom.